They weren't looking for a weapon. They were looking for history, and what they found shouldn't have survived at all. Cold water, black silence, a shape emerging from sonar like a ghost frozen in time. Steel ribs intact, hatches sealed, a machine built for war, resting exactly where it was never meant to be found. It had vanished in the final days of the conflict, when governments were collapsing, archives were burning, and certain operations were never written down. Why was it there? Why did it sink so far from any confirmed mission route? And why do declassified records still leave gaps where answers should be? Because this wasn't just another wreck. It was one of the most advanced systems of its era, designed for endurance, secrecy, and escape. And when divers reached it decades later, they realized something unsettling. It hadn't been scavenged, it hadn't been salvaged, it had been left deliberately. What rests inside that steel hull, and what? Similar discoveries have revealed across Europe, North Africa, and the Atlantic, forces a harder question about the final weeks of World War II, not what ended the war, but what was still being moved, hidden, or protected as it ended. They found themselves face to face with a German U-boat, perfectly preserved in the darkness. The submarine was U-3523, one of the most advanced vessels of its time. It had vanished in May of 1945, just days before Germany's surrender. For decades, its fate was unknown. The discovery raised immediate questions. What was the submarine doing in those waters? Why did it sink? And what, if anything, was it carrying when it went down? The Second World War ended more than 8 decades ago, but the physical remnants of that conflict continue to surface in unexpected places. These discoveries are not just relics. They are pieces of a historical puzzle that can change our understanding of events, reveal untold stories, and sometimes challenge accepted narratives. The process of locating and recovering these artifacts is complex. It involves archival research, advanced technology, and often a significant amount of luck. Each discovery brings with it a set of questions. Some can be answered through careful analysis. Others remain open, subject to interpretation and debate. The story of U-3523 is emblematic of the challenges involved in interpreting wartime discoveries. The submarine was a Type 21 U-boat, a revolutionary design that was far ahead of its time. Unlike earlier models, the Type 21 was capable of sustained underwater travel at high speeds. It had improved sonar, a streamlined hull, and advanced battery systems. Only a handful of these submarines became operational before the war ended, and most were scuttled by their crews to prevent capture. U-3523 was one of the few that attempted to escape. According to some accounts, it left port in early May of 1945, just as the Third Reich was collapsing. Its destination and mission, however, are not definitively known. When the wreck was discovered, some researchers speculated that the submarine might have been carrying high-ranking officials or valuable cargo. This theory was fueled by reports that several U-boats had been tasked with transporting documents, gold, and other assets out of Germany as the war drew to a close. However, no concrete evidence has been found to support this claim. The wreck has been surveyed, but it has not been fully excavated. The depth and condition of the site make such an operation difficult and expensive. Without access to the interior, many questions remain unanswered. The submarine could have been on a routine patrol, fleeing, or carrying something significant. The available evidence does not allow for a definitive conclusion. This pattern of discovery followed by speculation is common in the field of wartime archaeology. Physical evidence can tell us a great deal, but it rarely tells us everything. Context is critical, and in many cases, the context has been lost or obscured by time. The discovery of U-3523 is valuable not because it provides all the answers, but because it adds a new data point to our understanding of the final days of the war. Another significant discovery occurred in 2012, when a Polish oil worker stumbled upon the wreckage of a P-40 Kitty Hawk fighter plane in the Egyptian desert. The aircraft was remarkably well preserved, its structure largely intact, despite having been exposed to the elements for 70 years. The plane had belonged to Flight Sergeant Dennis Copping, a 24-year-old pilot with the Royal Air Force. On June 28, 1942, Copping was ferrying the damaged aircraft between two British airfields when he became disoriented and made an emergency landing in a remote area. The plane was found approximately 200 miles from the nearest settlement. The condition of the wreckage suggested that Copping had survived the landing. A parachute was found near the plane, apparently used as a makeshift shelter. There were no signs of immediate trauma. However, Copping himself was never seen again. Human remains were discovered in the vicinity of the crash site, but the British Ministry of Defense stated that they did not belong to Copping. This has led to ongoing questions about what happened to him. Did he attempt to walk out of the desert and succumb to the heat? Was he found by someone and buried elsewhere? The answers are not known. The discovery of the P-40 was significant for several reasons. First, it provided a rare example of a World War II aircraft that had been preserved by the dry desert environment. Most wartime planes that crashed in remote areas were either salvaged, destroyed by the elements, or lost entirely. The Kitty Hawk was in such good condition that it was referred to by some as the aviation equivalent of an archaeological treasure. Second, the discovery highlighted the human cost of the war in a very personal way. Copping was one of thousands of servicemen who died in circumstances that were never fully documented. If you value careful investigations like this, consider subscribing to the Anomaly Report. We're committed to exploring these stories with the rigor they deserve. The recovery and preservation of wartime artifacts involves ethical and legal considerations. Many of the sites where these objects are found are considered war graves. The wrecks of ships and aircraft often contain the remains of those who died in them. Disturbing these sites can be controversial. In some cases, families of the deceased have objected to salvage operations, arguing that the sites should be left undisturbed as memorials. In other cases, governments have intervened to protect sites from looters or unauthorized excavation. The legal framework governing these discoveries varies by country and by the nature of the site. Shipwrecks in international waters are subject to maritime law, which can be complex and contested. Aircraft that crashed on land are typically subject to the laws of the country where they are found. In some cases, ownership of the wreckage remains with the military that operated the vehicle, even decades after the war. Museums and research institutions must navigate a web of regulations and permissions before they can proceed with excavation or conservation work. One of the most famous examples is the case of the German battleship Bismarck. The ship was sunk by British forces in the North Atlantic in May of 1941 after a dramatic chase. The wreck was located in 1989 by oceanographer Robert Ballard. It was found at a depth of more than 15,000 feet, broken into several sections. The discovery provided valuable information about the ship's final moments. However, it also sparked a debate about whether the site should be explored further or left as a memorial to the more than 2,000 men who died when the ship went down. Ballard and his team conducted a survey of the wreck, but did not remove any artifacts. They argued that the site should be treated with respect, and that disturbing it would be inappropriate. This approach has been adopted by many researchers. The principle is that the wreck itself is a historical document, and that removing pieces of it can compromise its integrity. However, not everyone agrees. Some argue that artifacts recovered from wrecks can be preserved and displayed in ways that honor the memory of those who died while also educating the public. The debate continues. The technology used to locate and study these sites has advanced dramatically in recent decades. Sonar systems, remotely operated vehicles, and underwater drones have made it possible to explore depths and environments that were previously inaccessible. These tools allow researchers to create detailed maps of wreck sites, identify specific features, and even recover small objects without disturbing the larger structure. However, the technology is expensive, and funding for these projects can be difficult to secure. One area where technology has had a particularly significant impact is in the search for missing aircraft. During World War II, tens of thousands of planes were lost in combat, accidents, or due to mechanical failure. Many of these aircraft went down in remote areas, and their locations were never recorded. Families of the missing crew members have spent decades searching for answers. In recent years, organizations dedicated to locating and identifying these wrecks have made significant progress. They use a combination of archival research, eyewitness accounts, and advanced search techniques to narrow down potential crash sites. One such organization is Project Recover, a collaborative effort involving scientists, historians, and volunteers. The group has located dozens of missing aircraft in the Pacific region, including several that had been lost for more than 70 years. Each discovery is the result of painstaking research and fieldwork. The team reviews mission reports, interviews survivors, and analyzes environmental conditions to determine where a plane might have gone down. When a wreck is found, they document it carefully and work with government agencies to ensure that any remains are treated with dignity. The emotional impact of these discoveries should not be underestimated. For families who have waited decades for news of a missing loved one, the confirmation of a crash site can bring a sense of closure. It does not erase the loss, but it provides answers and allows for proper memorialization. In some cases, the remains of crew members are recovered and returned to their families for burial. In other cases, the site itself becomes a memorial. Not all wartime discoveries involve large objects like ships and planes. Some of the most intriguing finds are small, personal items that offer a glimpse into the lives of individuals. In 2012, a homeowner in England discovered the remains of a carrier pigeon in the chimney of his house. Attached to the bird's leg was a small canister containing a coded message. The message was dated June of 1944, during the period of the D-Day landings. It was addressed to a unit at Bletchley Park, the British code-breaking center. The message itself was encrypted, and despite efforts by historians and cryptographers, it has never been fully deciphered. The discovery of the pigeon raised questions about its mission and why it never reached its destination. Carrier pigeons were widely used during the war to transmit messages, especially in situations where radio communication was not possible or secure. Thousands of birds were trained and deployed by military units on both sides. Many were lost due to weather, predators, or enemy fire. The pigeon found in the chimney may have been carrying important intelligence, or it may have been part of a routine communication. Without the ability to decode the message, it is impossible to know for certain. If you find these kinds of investigations compelling, consider subscribing. There's much more to explore, and your support helps us continue this work. The use of code and encryption was a critical aspect of the war, and the efforts to break enemy codes had a profound impact on the outcome. The work done at Bletchley Park, led by mathematicians like Alan Turing, is now widely recognized as one of the most important intelligence achievements of the conflict. The breaking of the German Enigma code allowed the Allies to intercept and read thousands of enemy communications. However, the full extent of this work was not publicly known until decades after the war ended. The secrecy surrounding Bletchley Park meant that many of the people who worked there never received recognition during their lifetimes. The discovery of Enigma machines and related materials in the years since the war has provided historians with a better understanding of how the code-breaking effort functioned. Several Enigma machines have been found in attics, basements, and even at the bottom of lakes. Each discovery adds to the body of knowledge about the technology and the methods used to defeat it. Some of these machines have been restored and are now on display in museums. Another category of wartime discovery involves bunkers, tunnels, and other underground structures. During the war, both the Allies and the Axis powers constructed extensive networks of fortifications, many of which were hidden or camouflaged. Some were used for military purposes, such as command centers or weapons storage. Others were built to protect civilians from bombing raids. After the war, many of these sites were abandoned or sealed off. Over time, they were forgotten. In recent years, urban explorers, historians, and construction workers have rediscovered some of these hidden spaces. In 2015, construction workers in Germany uncovered a massive bunker complex beneath a residential neighborhood. The bunker had been built during the war to serve as a shelter for local residents during air raids. It consisted of multiple chambers connected by narrow corridors, with walls several feet thick. The structure had been sealed after the war and was not marked on any modern maps. The discovery prompted a debate about what to do with the site. Some argued that it should be preserved as a historical monument. Others believed it should be demolished. Ultimately, the decision was made to document the bunker thoroughly and then fill it in, citing safety concerns and the cost of preservation. The question of what to preserve and what to let go is a recurring theme in the field of wartime archaeology. Not every artifact or site can be saved. Choices must be made based on factors such as historical importance, condition, and available resources. These decisions are not always easy, and they can be contentious. Different stakeholders may have different priorities. Historians may want to preserve as much as possible for research purposes. Local communities may be more concerned with practical issues like safety and land use. One of the ongoing challenges in this field is the issue of looting and illegal excavation. Wartime sites, especially those in remote or poorly monitored areas, are vulnerable to theft. Artifacts from World War II can be valuable on the black market. Looting not only deprives researchers of important historical information, but it also disrespects the memory of those who fought and died. Efforts to combat looting include increased surveillance of known sites, public education campaigns, and stricter enforcement of laws protecting cultural heritage. The stories of these discoveries are not just about objects, they are about people. Each artifact represents a moment in someone's life, a decision made under extraordinary circumstances, a sacrifice or a stroke of luck. The work of uncovering and interpreting these remnants is a way of keeping those stories alive. It is a reminder that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a tapestry of individual experiences. The more we learn about the physical traces of the past, the better we can understand the human dimension of the war. As technology continues to advance, and as more sites are explored, it is likely that additional discoveries will be made. Some will be dramatic, like the finding of a lost submarine or a hidden cache of documents. Others will be small and seemingly insignificant. Each one contributes to the larger picture. The challenge for researchers is to approach these discoveries with care, to ask the right questions, and to avoid jumping to conclusions. The past is complex, and the evidence is often incomplete. But the effort to piece it together is worthwhile because it helps us understand not only what happened, but why it matters.